Dealing with economic crisis is big in itself, not to talk of dealing with economic and a health crisis at the same time. Welcome to Streams. On this edition of Streams, I'll be talking about survivor in a pandemic recession. During the 1936 depression, it was an economic one. During the 2008-2009 financial crisis, it was an economic recession. But at this time, we're dealing with economic recession that has fallen off the cliff as deep as 1936 recession. And at the same time, we're dealing with an health crisis that is as bad as 1918 flu crisis. So we as businesses, for those of you who are entrepreneurs, needs to begin to imagine and reinvent yourself in such a way that you can survive this pandemic recession because no one has ever experienced it before. That's why a lot of financial experts, economists are scratching their heads because there's no model to deal with health crisis and economic crisis at the same time. Think of it. If the government or institutions were able to provide stimulus like they are doing in some countries of the world, and they're able to do some interventions, if you solve the economic aspect of it, how about the health aspect? And in 2008, 2009, while there was crisis in some parts, some other parts of the world were able to pick up the slack. But there's no one who can pick up the slack now because this crisis is affecting everyone at the same time. There's a global recession, there's a global lockdown, and everyone is trying to just survive. But for a business person in this crisis, I give you 3 scenarios with which you can problem solve, you can begin to position yourself or begin to think through how you are going to survive. Because, like I can tell you for free, so many businesses, as you know it, will not come back after this recession. The world ended as we know it. A lot of high street names in the UK, for example, are disappearing like, mist on the high street. And so many other businesses are disappearing also. Some were already on lifeline before the pandemic. The pandemic just hastened their death. So also, so many global economies were already on life support. This crisis just buried them. So many businesses, I don't know where your own business is, whether it was robust or it's been hemorrhaging or heavily impacted by the COVID crisis or this pandemic-induced recession. We are not out of it yet. You need to change your strategy and look at these 3 scenarios, and it will help you a lot in surviving this pandemic recession. Number 1, look at the best case scenario. What is your best case scenario in your country or in your sector of the economy? Will the vaccines that are being touted about around the world, will it work? Will it be effective when it's been, put to use? Will COVID-19 suddenly become something like Ebola crisis that we no longer talk about again because COVID-19 is totally gone? And then the economy recovers, bounces back, and we went back to pre-COVID-19 crisis. And of course, you are able to get your customers back and things are back to normal. That is your best case scenario. But we are likely to overestimate something positive in crisis. What is the likely case scenario? The likely case scenario is that the vaccine are effective, but not as effective as we had imagined, or the recession takes a while before we're out of it, but somehow we muddled along and things a semblance of normal, but not totally back to normal. But some businesses are lost, some are recovering, some jobs are lost, some people get new job, a new economy, and things are tugging along. But what is the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is the vaccine is not effective, the health crisis got worse in the new year, and instead of tailing off, is spiking again. There are new lockdowns or there are new kind of restrictions or tier system like we're practicing in Europe and the UK, for example, where we have tier one, tier two, and tier three. Let's say that persists for a very long time. And instead of having a robust recovery, we have a very anemic recovery. It takes time before the recovery can even set in, and everything thrown at it, the economy is not recovering fast. More jobs are lost, more businesses disappear off the high street, and everyone is just barely surviving. That is the worst case scenario, that even there might be future lockdowns in order to still control this until maybe the vaccine takes hold, or maybe they go back and reinvent the vaccine for us to have a semblance of normalcy. That looks scary. But as a business that wants to survive this pandemic recession, base your strategy on worst case scenario. You see, in a crisis like this, you don't want to base your strategy on likely case scenario or best case scenario. You want to base your strategy on the worst case scenario, that if this lockdown persists longer, what do I need to do? So you need to trigger what they call maybe your nuclear option now, so that you can build a resilience if, say, for example, there was this business in the UK, Debenhams, a household name that have like 124 stores. Now they are about shutting down. Instead of shutting down the 24 stores, will you imagine if they had closed down half of the stores before the recession bites this out? Or they keep like 20 just to keep getting along till they can get to a place where they can begin to rebound. You need to ask yourself those difficult questions. How many staffers have you got? What decisions do you need to make? It might be painful, but you will survive. You might need to take difficult, drastic decisions so that you can survive. Because if you don't take those decisions, you might not survive this pandemic recession. That's why I say you base your strategy on the worst case scenario. If you have offices, do you need to right size and move your business online? When things normalizes, you go back to offices. If you have 10 stores, and instead of keeping those stores and wishing things were happening, will you reduce it to 3 or 4 or 2? What you want is, what will it take for me to survive under a worst case scenario? That is what you need to be thinking. Because if your strategy can withstand a worst case scenario for what that may look like for you, then if it is likely case scenario or best case scenario, that means you are going to survive. But you cannot base your strategy on a likely or best case scenario. You need to look at the worst case scenario of your situation. What is the worst case scenario that could happen? What is the worst case scenario? And if your business or the strategy you are putting together for your business can withstand a worst case scenario, then you have a shot at surviving this pandemic. But if your likelihood of survival is based on a best case scenario or a likely case scenario, then you have not started. So I invite you, for you to survive this pandemic recession, develop a strategy that can withstand a worst case scenario. I know this could be gloom and doom for some people, but this is what it takes to survive in a time like this. Share this and reflect on it in your business. Share with your team and begin to plan what is the worst case scenario in our industry, what is the worst case scenario in our line of credit, what is the worst case scenario in our value chain supply, what is the worst case scenario in our customer situation. And that will enable you to create a strategy that will make your business or your brand to survive. I hope this is useful for someone and some industries. I hope to see you on the next episode. I hope your business survived this pandemic recession, but be sure to subscribe to this channel. You will receive materials that will help you to survive this recession. Thank you and hope to see you on the next episode. Bye for now.